Welcome to Success Talks, an exclusive podcast for our Yellow Magazine contributors. Success Talks features life-enhancing interviews with real people in professional roles and small businesses, providing our listeners tools, insights, and thought leadership to help restore life balance and redefine success. Each interview is varied and includes key lessons designed to help you focus your mind, improve productivity, and enable freedom and fulfillment. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome to our monthly book review with Sharon Leigh. This month, the book that we are reviewing is Wanting by Luke Burgis. Sharon, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sharon Leigh, and I'm a native Washingtonian, but I live in France. I've been in Europe for almost 25 years now. And yeah, love Europe. I'm a neurodivergent behavioral scientist, and I'm a yes and expert, an instructional designer, an experimental learning coach, and an emergent core story facilitator. So I do trainings and trainings, coachings, and facilitating. And I read a lot. I do a lot of research. I love to research.
That's why you're the person to have on the book review. So tell us, why Wanting by Luke Burgis?
That's I would say the key question is this book. I read a lot, and a lot of times books will, they're good, and it's like, yes, it's important. And every once in a while, something that comes across my radar where I'm like, oh my God, this book. Everybody should read this book. And I actually started not a book club, but I posted on a LinkedIn to get a group to talk about it, because my nearest and dearest were growing weary of me talking about it. And it's amazing, because as a behavioral scientist, of course, it's at the core of everything that I think about. And the wanting, and it's the power of a mimetic desire, which is the mimicking. And he talks about how we're hardwired to do this, from right from when we're born. And so, but this carries over into everything that we do in society. So it can be very positive and it can be negative. Now, of course, most people are not really aware of it, although they're, societies are more and more, cultures are more and more savvy, but it's very, very hard to live outside of it. And I'm trying to think of which direction to go first, because there's any number of rabbit holes to jump down. Let me start with I don't want to say start with the negative side. I can give a couple examples. For example, with the internet and the Instagram. And because, we mimic each other, it's that kind of what, the Joneses, whose grass is greener. You want to be better than the Joneses. We're always trying to be better than or equal to. And so there's a hustle with that. And so while it can, help people reach a higher level, it's also very, very destructive. And with the internet, the mimetic competition is like the dial on that is turned way, way up. And the people who are really, I want to say, paying for it, the effect is very, very negative, is on preteen and teenage girls. And there's a lot of studies about this, and everybody's hearing more and more and more about it. This is not a hidden thing anymore. People know about it. But what can be done? We can, that's the question. How do you turn that off once that door, the top to Pandora's box has been open? And so a lot of what his book is about, and it's talking about the mimetic desire, talking about, as humans, how we're hardwired to do this and have these reactions. And so then how can we counterbalance? And this is kind of I mean, our society needs it desperately. When I say our society, I mean the global society, because it's one thing on the Western culture, then it goes into other cultures, and they're doing. But we're all doing it. It's in our politics, it's in advertising, it's what's off the charts in advertising. But this is what literally, like Facebook and Instagram are built on, is people competing with each other. And again, it can be a wonderful tool, but if we aren't educating each other about the effects of it and how to counteract it and how to step outside of it when we want to, then it's doing some damage. But it's also, for example, when I write any marketing or announcements for my workshops or trainings, I just have these rules that I follow, and I will not tweak people's emotions. I will not do it. And that's bottom line. I won't say, the fear of missing out. It's like, only 3 days left. I only have 2 seats left. I won't do it. I refuse. Absolutely refuse to tweak people's emotions, because we've had too much of it. And okay, so that's one track. Okay. The other part of this that I find just, so fascinating is because I'm a neurodivergent. And so I have ADD, I'm on the spectrum, I've, the dyslexia, I can never remember because of the dyslexia, I can never remember how to pronounce this word that is with the numbers. It's dyscalculia. Oh, I can't even say it. And and forget about spelling it. And sensory issues. And on top of that, okay, I'm non-binary. So it's like I live in the gray area. And so a lot of in our societies, the advertising things and the things that most humans are susceptible to with the mimetic desire, I'm just not. It's kind of almost like it doesn't touch me. And I see it for what it is. Now, granted, we talked about this in our family when I was little, about advertising and things like that. So I was aware of it on one level, but just on my own base level, it just, I never really wanted to fit in. I never had that desire to be like, but I want to be like everybody else. I was like, whatever. So there's a freedom in that. There's an amazing, I don't struggle with it. There's no struggle for me with that. And like, what a blessing. And I don't suffer like so many people I know, and I don't get it. And I think this is part of the being on the spectrum, the Asperger's, because I hear people all the time that are, with Instagram and Facebook, and it's like, yeah, but they're doing this and I should be. And I'm like, well,
should is a toxic word. I should. It's like,
I know, right? But I'm like, but I want to be. I was like, do you? Or I'm miserable. And okay, well then stop. Yeah, but I can't. I have to. I'm like, my question. I'm always like, well, why? What? Just stop. Just don't. What are you doing? And so I have to really be careful when I say things like that, because it comes across as being judgmental, but I'm actually just perplexed. Because I'm like, why would they why? I don't understand. Why would you keep doing that thing if it's, making you miserable? And so this is what I really found fascinating. And so I've been wanting to talk to everybody about it, and all these other neurodivergents that are in my orbit, which I've collected a lot over the course of the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, how is this for you? And so it's not a universal thing with neurodivergence. There are a lot of people, neurodivergents, that want desperately to fit in. And so they're doing what that thing's called masking, to try and fit into a neurotypical society. So they do certain things that kind of stand in for being, quote unquote, normal. And I'm thinking, why don't I feel that way? And it's like, God, that's so, the freedom that comes with it is just undeniable. And so I always think, well, should I be teaching like workshops about this? And so it's like, I will totally use the book as like reference and almost Bible like with that, because it's helping people step outside this self-imposed, I mean, granted, we're hardwired this way, but you can step out of it. And so, but of course, a conscious choice. But some people, it's better they would rather, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, because stepping outside of the conforms or the constructs of a culture is not easy. Because if they're already, mimicking, if people are already mimicking and they so desperately want to be kind of like everybody else, then, asking them to let go of that is even scarier. So it's almost like leaning into your biggest fears, which is some people are just, they're not going to do it. So it's like, okay, so I do a lot of thinking around that. And so I keep, I don't know if you're going to be showing the video, but it's, and I have notes in pencil in all the margins. I'm definitely my mother's daughter with that. And so I'm like having conversations with Luke that he has no idea that he and I are having. And in the margins of his book, I would love to have a conversation with him. So Luke, if you're listening.
A few things that you've said there. Does it say in the book? So I've only listened to a podcast about it. I haven't read the book. I'm more of a listener than a reader. It's just the way that I like
totally
to.
Okay.
Different way. So does it say in the book, because you just mentioned there, we're all hardwired, and I think that comes down to belonging, to feel accepted and belong to something, which is why we find it very difficult to move away from cultures or companies as well, because you may have an identity that I am a financial advisor. Well, how dare you go off and go be a hairdresser? Like, that's just
right
awful.
There's so much judgment in it.
Absolutely, right? So but then you said that for yourself you've never wanted to fit in. So for someone like you, who you're more in tune with yourself and you would lead by your own desires, where do you find that you're affected by the mimic desire? So is there someone that is a model for you?
Oh, yes.
You go, all right, well, that's what I want to be like. So it affects all of us. Where do you see it?
Okay, the languaging. Sorry.
Tell me.
No, the languaging you just said, it excuse me. Like, who do I want to be like? I never think like that. It's like, wow, what they're talking about, that's amazing. That's, so I only always want to be like me. And so it just doesn't occur to me to be like somebody else. I just don't ever have that. So it's funny that you said that. It's because I just noticed, it just popped up.
Not like it's more like a value thing. So someone's demonstrating your value. So for example, you're very inquisitive, you're curious.
Right. I just notice other people.
Yeah. So do you then like have a connection with someone based on the way that they're behaving, and then you're drawn to them and they're modeling parts of you, and that's quite exciting?
Right. And it's and again, it's like what he was saying, that it's like, if you can't say I don't mimic, because everybody does. It's just the modeling, who we're modeling on, and it's like, oh, I really like that. I like the way people think. I like the way people, are more open to a perspective. And so I go, okay, that's an interesting behavior. That's an interesting way to look at that. And I watch people's, I want to say, their track record, and say, that would be an interesting way to build mine. So I don't want to be like them, but the thing that they're doing is like, would that work for me? So I think about it. Would that, how would that work for me? And so I think maybe I should experiment with that. But the person, here's a good example, Brene Brown. Okay.
Oh, I love her.
Who
Oh,
doesn't? She's
oh my
amazing.
God.
She's amazing. No, I don't want to be like her. I could never be like her, but I'm impressed and charmed by her on so many levels. And it's like the hard work that she does. And I'm just like, wow, she's like so cool and so solid. And again, her track record of being her the way she is interesting. And so I think that's something that for myself, having integrity now, and again, my biggest model, of course, is my mother and her level of integrity. So I recognize when people have that, and it really jumps out. And so it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but the values, like you said, there's certain values that really stand out for me that I would be like, oh, I would, and again, the clue is like, would I want to hang out with them? Would I want to have dinner? And it's like, yes, yes, yes. I want to have a conversation with this person. And so that's always a clue that their values are kind of in the right area. And they could be wildly different than me. But the values thing, it's not that I want, it's everything that it's fuzzy edged. It's not a hard line, like I want to be exactly like that, or but there's certain areas for sure of values that I'm drawn to, no question. Yeah. But the open-mindedness and the curiosity are huge. That's a huge one as well.
Yeah, for the short time that I've known you, I
Mhm.
can clearly see you're very curious and open and explore. And what I also really like is that you challenge me. So I'm very much, I lead by people's behaviors, and I'm drawn to certain people because I'm like, oh, I really like that about that person. And I do wonder, I don't know if Luke touches on this, you've got mimic desire. So you want to model someone because you like what they are doing, behaving, have, whatever it might be. Is there like a repel? Because there's certain people that I've met where I've gone, I do not want to be like that. That is terrible behavior. So it kind of like teaches me that what's most important to me, because I'm like, oh no, that didn't feel right, that didn't look right. Or like what you said, the whole 2 days to go or only one space left, the emotional marketing, that really turns me off. And I've heard other coaches do it, and I'm like, that's just not me. And I can't tell you why. I just, to my core, it doesn't feel right. So my answer is no, I will not take part in that thing. So it's almost like a repel of certain things.
Exactly.
I just have to feel that in me and just go, well, I just, for whatever reason, that's what it is. I just need to live my truth. And that's where the freedom for me comes from.
Exactly. And you brought up a really good point, because this is I would say not more of how it affects me. It's more obvious, I would say, for me, that of what I don't want, and how I don't want it to be. And of course, in certain situations that can come across as appearing very judgmental, whereas I want to say it's not so, because I totally believe that everybody has the right to do whatever they want. It's just not for me. But sometimes I can, come across as, and it's like, oh God, not that, anything but that, like with the marketing thing. It comes across very strongly. But he speaks about that, and he says that we mimic or repel, but it still drives us. And that's very interesting. A good example for that is from very young with my sister, and I just did not want to be like her. And she did a lot of the not destructive, but unhealthy choices and this and that, and I was just like, yeah, no, that is not how I want to live my life, and both with people and with drugs and alcohol. And just didn't, in fact, it took me a long time to say I was gay, because she was gay, and I was just like, if that's gay, I want nothing to do with that. And it was super strong. So it would, if I would have been an only child or in a different sibling configuration, I probably would have come out much earlier. And yeah, so there is that. I have been affected I would say more by that than by wanting to be like other people. And it's not that I wanted to be different. It wasn't that. I just didn't care, because not wanting to be like somebody, like with my sister, I know what that feels like. That's a very strong feeling. But with everybody else, I just didn't care. And it's like with the in the world of Instagram, it's not like I don't want to be like that. Then as soon as you start feeling that more powerful feeling, that you're being driven. If you just don't care, that's just being ambivalent, and so you're not as affected. So it's interesting to pay attention to how we feel about it and how strong those feelings are to certain things. And so I love how he talks about that, because I'm like, oh yeah, right. I know what you're talking about, but because I had never had anybody speak about it before, I didn't, yeah. And so of course I scan everything in my life and look at it through that filter, that perspective, and be like, oh, okay, super interesting. And at what age did I start changing? And at what age did I, this kind of thing, and where I want to go in the future, what will this look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a positive draw into this mimic behavior, that it's like, well, certainly for me, I don't know where it stemmed from, but I've always wanted to be achieving more. Yeah, it could have stemmed from school, getting awards or something, getting that gold star. I just don't know. But I've always had that in me to just keep doing more. So I'm drawn to certain people. So I find that when I'm inspired by someone, that is very motivational to keep growing, and I feel energized by it and I love it. So there's got to be a very positive side. What is Luke suggested on the benefits of having mimic desire?
Well, there's all kinds of benefits. It's just being aware of it and keeping it in balance. And if you're doing it just because of that, now, I mean, we've had a number of discussions, and I have to admit, when we first met, I'm like, okay, why is she doing it? Is she doing it for her? And I don't know if you remember me asking you a bunch of questions around that, because I wanted to know, not from a judgmental aspect, but I was just very, very curious. What was your driver? Was it, intrinsic or extrinsic? Because he doesn't really talk about a lot of that. But I'm also fascinated with the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And it's like, if somebody is driven by extrinsic motivators, then they're definitely
what does
more susceptible.
Describe extrinsic.
Sorry, right.
Because some people will be listening going, what the hell? So yeah,
right.
That, and
thanks for
your thought.
Thanks for asking. Okay, intrinsic is, intrinsic motivation is like the engine that drives you from the inside. You do it because you want to. You do things, you're motivated. It's internally, and people mix this up off very, very often with being introverted and extroverted. It has nothing to do with that. There can be a lot of overlap, but they're two separate things. And so extrinsic motivation is people that need outside influence to do something. And they're motivated. They're not motivated if they're like, just by themselves, from the inside. It's like if they had to see something or I'm explaining this very badly. Okay, everybody, just Google it. I'm so sorry.
Because I did a podcast
horrible
as well quite recently. So
right.
Yeah, deep motivations, something, and I think that where this may have overlap with mimic desire, because what I'm thinking is like
that I can talk about. Yeah.
I'm thinking like a quadrant here. I don't know whether this actually goes together. But yeah, like the intrinsic, for me, like what you said about your siblings, well, there was things in my mum that I really didn't like. She was very overworked, stressed, and there was behaviors that I had to deal with as a child, and I didn't like it. So I was like, I don't want that. So to my core, I think I've created like core values on the back of this. And that's my intrinsic desire of whatever I've designed my future to look like. I'm like, no, I'm really drawn to these things, or I'm really motivated to give to others. Like, I love throwing events and parties because internally I'm so excited, I'm energized, you know. It's just me, it's my character, it's what makes me up. That's intrinsic motivator.
That totally.
Whereas an extrinsic motivator would be me trying to get a bonus at work. You know, I'm motivated by that financial reward because I might want to then buy that table. I did do that. I named my table Jerry because I really wanted a new table. So that's extrinsic because it was like a thing that I wanted, and the thing was purely because I wanted like an Instagram worthy home, right? So that was all extrinsic, not intrinsic.
Right. And there's also with extrinsic, if you hear the voice in your head, because that's kind of where it comes from. It doesn't come because nobody's saying it to us but us.
Yeah.
If you hear yourself saying, I should, or I have to.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a signal.
Yeah.
That's a signal that it's that's an extrinsic motivation of something that you're wanting. You know, so why do you want it? If you want it just because you want it, because it makes you happy, and nobody ever. So I use the tool of, you know, that thing of, if you were on an island and nobody was around, would you still want that thing?
Yes, I want that table.
Yeah.
I really wanted that table.
But I totally get that, because that's what drives me. I don't care if anybody sees the thing. You know, for the most part. And there are other things when I'm designing something. Of course, this is an interesting question. Oh, I just thought of something. All right, this is fresh off the press, people. Hang in here. Yeah, as I'm thinking, I think the way I design it is to touch people's intrinsically, you know, their little core self intrinsically, that little, like the pocket of where joy is fabricated, you know. And it's so much fun and so cool to see people light up. And it's like, I know when I'm building something or doing, you know, creating a program or something, I think about that. Now this is a very, very healthy way of extrinsic motivation, because it's like the creating joy. I mean, what's bad about that? But it's just strictly to provoke it in others, because it's one of the descriptive ways I describe myself is a joy instigator. And it's so simple and subtle sometimes, but that's when it's somebody else outside of me when that happens. But I could tell that with the extrinsic thing, but it's not to have something or what they're going to think of me.
Yes.
So there's yeah.
Well, you just touched on something that's really interesting that I heard in the podcast around wanting, and that was about, we have people that we want to model, but we ourselves are also modeling. There's no hierarchy to modeling, like, because like what you said, you take bits from everyone. You're like, oh, I really like this and I really like that. Not like, sorry. Let me change my language. You're just you're drawn to certain aspects, right? And it's just like, well, you're doing the same to others. We all have a collective responsibility. Or do we? Maybe we don't. Maybe if you're just who you are, what you want to be, then your responsibility is to bring joy to yourself. But know that what you're doing, you are also a model of desire.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where I was going to go next. So it's like perfect timing. This is like dancing, isn't it? And this is a point that I've been needing to grow more comfortable with. And I loved when he was talking about it. I was like, oh, that's the language. That's the language. That's why I'm uncomfortable, is because I don't, it's not that I don't care, but because I was just about, indifferent about people. And he was describing that one of the most powerful things is indifference, which then makes people want to model us. And I was like, it just like blew open my head. And I was like, oh, that describes the discomfort. Because there's been a number of times, I mean, more times than I can count, where people have done that. They're modeling on me, and it makes me highly uncomfortable. And so I was like, why? So I've been thinking about that a lot as well. And I think, okay, what do I do with that? Because when there was one point where it was really acute, and it was when I was doing artwork in the United States before I moved to Europe, and I was doing an art show, and these women were talking about my art, and they were saying, well, she does this, and she's like this, and she's like that. And these women, I don't know these women, but they were, and I like just blending in and just walking around so these people don't know who I am. And you hear them talking. It was so strange. Now I know that there's a lot of people, if they're missing certain things, emotionally or whatever, that's like, emotional crack of people worshiping them and it freaked me out. And I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. Where, and I understand why some people that go after fame, why they do it. And I understood it like in a heartbit.
It's like they're in a vulnerable state, like they're lost and confused.
And they're looking for somebody to model on. And it's just like funk, and they I'm careful with my words now, because it can seem, the word, I'll be honest, the word that popped into my head is they stick to you. And as somebody who's neurodivergent, that's like, oh my God, no. And it was such an uncomfortable feeling. And there's been at different parts of my life where I can feel this. And so I've had some friends and mentors say, okay, let's look at this. Let's think about it. Let's sit in it. Let's stand in it. And I'm just like, and like, why don't you want somebody to model on you? What's the uncomfortable part of that? I'm like, I find it to be uncomfortable. I don't want to say strange. It's not strange, because it happens. It happens quite frequently. But when he was describing that it's the people that are indifferent, other people can't help but be attracted to that. It's this rebellious factor that other humans are attracted to, the rebels and the ones who stand outside. So just by the nature of my being, I am not rebellious, but I am a rebel, just by the way that I navigate through life.
Is that because
it's not a
what we
choice.
don't have? Like, we're always living in like a loss. You have something that I don't have, so now I'm drawn to you more.
I don't know if that, for me, that doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound quite right. I'm not saying it's not. It's not, that particular description doesn't seem right. I mean, for you, totally. If you see it that way and you feel it that way, absolutely legitimate. For me, I don't see it and feel it that way, and I don't feel that other people, for the most part, feel it that way. Although I do know people who are very much are that way. Yes, I can say I can name, which I won't do here.
That's where the masking comes in, isn't it? Because
that's where they're vulnerable. That's where they're vulnerable.
Where people are vulnerable to paint a picture. Yeah. So they're saying, like, this is what you really want. This is not you. This is what you want. And that's how they lure them in to then buy the products, or the same with, like you said earlier about social media. Someone's got the latest shoes and they're taking pictures like, oh, look what I've got. They might see that person as the pinnacle for them, that's their model, and they buy the shoes and they feel like, well, I'm right now in a place where I'm lost, maybe I'm insecure, maybe I've just gone through a traumatic experience, my partner cheated on me. Like, that brings up a lot of
and of course nobody's saying that in their head, it's happening, but they're not even unaware of it at that level.
No, absolutely not. So scrolling through social media mindlessly is a dangerous game, and it's like, catch yourself in that act immediately, because you're susceptible of going down the rabbit hole of, oh, what's this one thing, or oh, let me just go onto not social media, onto like eBay or something, let me go buy that item, you know, that sort of behavior I see triggers in them. That's when I would say you're in a very vulnerable state, and that could be a temporary thing, that could be because you're on your own. Some people just really don't like being in their own company, so then they are in this vulnerable state and they gravitate towards social media. It could be that you just, like I said, had a traumatic experience, say your partner cheated on you, or you were made redundant, then I tend to see people spend more time on social media because they're trying to find themselves again. So it can be on many different scales. It could be temporary and it could be for a longer period of time. But at that point, that's where the toxic side of mimicking someone's desire can really take you on the wrong journey, take you down a path that wasn't really for you. However, having said that, it's good to go down these paths because you learn a lesson or two.
Hopefully, yes. Well, I've, and I mean, the people either learn it, the short way or the long way. It's either a short path or a long path. So I wanted to circle back around and ask you what, because of the platform that you have, I know people model on you. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, so I know that. I had a client who said to me, we'd been working together for about a year, and she went off, had this experience, and she said to me, she's like, right, Tammy, this is what happened, and I heard your voice in my head, and I knew what you were going to say. And I was just like, oh my, like, I have such an impact. And it was a big moment. Like, I knew it, but I didn't, not really consciously. And I thought, my voice is in other people's head, just like I have other people that I hear constantly, and I think, well, what would they do in this situation? Okay, well, that's the answer. So I definitely impact people through the things that I do and behave. So what I always do is I go back to what brings you joy. Who are you, Tammy? And just live that truth. And if people want to take some of that, go for it, because they're drawn to it, but only if it's the right thing for them. And sometimes in my coaching sessions, it's trying to get them to recognize what things do they want to take on as their own, what's their new value and belief systems that they want to work towards, and where are they getting that information from, and are they behaving that, and what's that telling them? Because if it feels wrong, just don't do it. There's something within you that's not right. But if you feel like it's the right thing, then go for it. And that's what coaching's great for, because I am like the driver in their car, like a co-driver, and we explore different roads and avenues. And I'm like, well, if you take this one based on the information you have, because that's just the information you've got right now, and that's fine. You're not meant to know everything, because then you'll procrastinate. So just take that choice, but there's the consequence. But then you've got this option. This is what it could look like, but here's the consequence. You've got this option. So we talk about it, but I never tell them what to do. And whatever decision they make, I'm like, it's fine. We're going to go down this road together. It might be a bumpy road, but I'm with you. If you get to a boulder and that road is closed, we'll talk about it, because there's a lesson, and it's okay to go backwards. It's fine. We can go back because we've taken a lesson, and we'll apply that moving forward. So I have to stick to my values. I have to stick to what coaching is all about. And by behaving that way, I would like to think that it's the right thing overall, but I wouldn't really know until I start collecting more data on how these people are making decisions. And sometimes I just wouldn't know. But yes, I definitely make an impact. I'm aware of that.
Yeah, no, I love the way you described it. I love the way you describe it, because I do the same thing. And I've become more comfortable in that, in the, because I don't give it, advice and you have to do that. Never. But there, I do hear people say, yeah, I hear your little voice in my head, and I'm just, but it's still, it catches me a little bit. But the responsibility of that, sometimes I feel, it's a big responsibility to put ourselves out there, knowing that people are doing the modeling, and I take it very seriously, and I'm so careful. I'm so careful. Because that thing, kind of like the doctor thing of, rule number one, do no harm. And I feel very, very strongly about that, because noticing it. But the book, wanting to come back around to it, I would say by reading this, he has helped me be more comfortable with that part of myself, and being a model. And it's not an imposter syndrome. I want to make that clear to other people that like you and I, because I don't think you suffer from that either, from the discussions that we've had. It's just a thing of like, the being aware of it, and then going, it's not I'm not worthy to be a model. It has nothing to do with that. It's just this, there's a level of responsibility to it, of choosing it in terms of interacting with clients and people, knowing that it's happening.
We said earlier about taking bits from different people. So my partner, something that I absolutely love about him is that he pauses before he speaks. Normally people would fill that gap in. So if he's silent, they keep talking, and it's like, just give him a moment. He's processing what you've just said, and then he's thinking his words through, because whatever comes out of his mouth, he's thought about. Whereas I was never like that. I would just speak. Like, that was it. But when I started coaching, I thought, no, Tam, you can't do that. Really, you cannot do that. You need to give yourself that moment to process what is going on, and not project my moral compass. Like, that's in me. I can't project that on them. They need to come to their conclusion, because the way that they see the world is going to be different. And that's absolutely fine, because we need to be in a position that people feel comfortable with themselves. They've got an element of trust. There's no projection, or as little as possible, because it's hard to but as little as possible. And by doing so, it collectively allows us to evolve into a better place. Now, I'm just very conscious of time. We need to finish with that one yellow question, and this is perfect timing. So here we go. Yellow question is,
yes,
what would the future look like if everyone read this book?
It's funny, because when we discussed this earlier, I did not think the first thing out of my mouth would be, but it's because of our conversation that so right off the thing that was on the tip of my tongue right when you asked the question is, I'd probably have a lot more coaching clients, because people would see the value in it, is the first thing that was on the tip of my tongue. But kind of in the long term, because I do think in the long vision, is I think we would see a change in advertising. I think we would see a change in the people building platforms and apps, and I think there would be more integrity in everything that we use and everything that we come in contact with. It's hard to imagine. It sounds like total science fiction. I don't want to say it would be a kinder, gentler world, but maybe, I think, because with the awareness is at such a high level, we wouldn't be, twisting each other's, emotions over things to get what we want. We would be more self-aware, but that's now I have to say that it, the answer would have been different before the pandemic, because people had asked me about management, and agile, and I was thinking, not in my lifetime. And I actually said it 2 weeks before moving here, which came here 2 months before the first hard lockdown. And I laugh at myself, the fact that I said that, on tape, of haha, not in my lifetime. And it's like, bang, the pandemic happened, and so many magic doors open that allow the human evolution on a global scale. And the people who I've done a lot of connecting with and have, collaboration and talking with and moving things forward are people from not, non-Western countries, because they really get it. It's the Western countries it's going to take time to catch up, which I find absolutely fascinating, because these other countries are like, oh yes, of course. They have a longer vision. They come out on a number. There's a number of different things that are different, but it's exciting. These are exciting times, and so I no longer will say, and I rarely speak in extremes, in black and white. But that time I did, and wow, look at this, because we wouldn't have met, I don't think. So many amazing things happen. And I think that this book is at the right place at the right time, with enough open minds that it will be interesting to see. And of course, me talking about it always, the ripple effect. It's going to be interesting to see what the future brings. But I think if everybody read this, that would be quite something. It would be quite something.
Yeah, anything will be possible.
Yeah. But having more, I don't want to say power over ourselves, but anything where that happens is a good thing. The awareness, not power, it's the command, self-command, emotional self-command. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Sure. We'll all be vibrating on a different level, and there'll be a collection of love and power, and what a beautiful place that would be in.
Yeah.
A yellow
Et
place.
voilà. Yeah. Yes.
Welcome to Go to Yellow. Subscribe to our channel to learn how to redefine success and restore life balance. If you like this video, please give it a like, leave a comment below. But remember to turn off the notifications, because we want you to live your life and not to be controlled by the ping. May your life be yellow.